All right, let's do the record. Excellent. I guess we should enjoy that our meetings are recorded. Is that correct, Professor?
Absolutely.
At some point, posterity will look fondly upon us, unless Wes runs for office, and then the opposition folks will just like read through every single word and said, you know what you said back in 2023 and October 6th. Yeah, I get it. Do we care about that? Are you planning on running for office?
No, but I covered the Calvin Coolidge speech, Business in the Free Press, last week in my classes, and I was very pleased when my classes all got the irony that Calvin Coolidge gave a speech about how easy it is to lie by taking things out of context, and that's the speech that people lie about him and take out of context.
You've mentioned that before, and what's the name of that speech?
It's just called Business in the Free Press, but
Business and the Free Press.
Yeah, I would someday, if we really want to bore you, give me 45 minutes to just go line by line through that speech and you recognize the brilliance of Calvin Coolidge.
Well, I think we should probably do that. Interestingly enough, my wife said, have you ever looked up like his syllabi or curriculum of what kind of classes he teaches? Why don't you ask him about what he teaches? And I go, I don't want to do that. That's like a homework to find out what he actually does.
Well,
but I should probably find out.
Job,
Well,
and I did have this
it would
great
be nice.
moment that's very rare for me where, some students after class said, that was really great. I learned something today. And I thought, what's it like
great?
every day?
Yeah. Well, they get credit. I don't get any credit for doing this. So that's why,
exactly.
It's a good idea, Emeritus, and maybe I will at some point. But for now, I'm just going to talk about what I want to talk about.
Gotcha.
So, Professor, I really want to talk about this today. And actually, if you have knowledge of historical precedents or similar things that have happened in history, or, yeah, sure, John, but you're kind of overreacting, I'd love to hear it today. I am not freaked out that we don't have a Speaker of the House, that the first time in U.S. history a Speaker got kicked out during session. They get kicked out, I guess, in between. But during session, this is a new territory. And I'm not scared or nervous for America on that issue. I'm really not. And I'm not even scared about America overall. But this is a kind of a weird time with Putin raising his head in odd ways and China raising their heads in odd ways. And in the South, Africa and South America and maybe parts of Asia are kind of engaging in ways that could counter the United States or Western Europe. So if you are a fearful person, this is a time to be fearful, I think, in the next 5 or 10 years. What do you think? Are you just plain optimistic, everything's hunky-dory in the world, or is this a scary time? Let me give one more point. If you read between the lines, any news story, pick any of them, any channel, any politician, the drums of war are beating, and they're pretty consistent. It looks to me like everybody's foreshadowing that the U.S./Europe is going to go to war against China or Russia or both or some other, or North Korea or some other weird thing. It's just too frequent and too common now. So my eyebrows are raised that the power structures in the world are positioning themselves for a big battle. Anyway, you think I'm paranoid, or you think I'm aware? What are your kind of thoughts?
It's funny. Maybe just because we were talking about Coolidge for a second, but I was reminded of something else that's in his speech on the anniversary of the Declaration of Independence that they read out loud at Ashland every year. But it has this line that says, their ideas are not more modern, but more ancient than those of our revolutionary fathers. And every now and then we need to remind ourselves of what I think is Coolidge also got right. He says, they cannot lay claim to progress. For some,
what's that mean? That didn't resonate with me yet.
It means that that there will always be a group of people on Earth who will claim to have a new idea that is more advanced than equality of the individual. Maybe I mean, actually, Jake just pulled the link up. I'll now I've really commandeered this
Multitasking.
the show for
Good.
but
I'll get us back on track in a little bit. Keep going.
so this famous paragraph, he says, about the Declaration, there is a finality that is exceedingly restful. It's often asserted that the world has made a great deal of progress since 1776, and that we've had new thoughts and new experiences which have given us a great advance over the people of that day, and that we may therefore discard their conclusions for something more modern. And then this is the great Coolidge turn. But that reasoning cannot be applied to this great charter. If all men are created equal, that is final. If they're endowed with inalienable rights, that is final. If governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed, that is final. No advance, no progress can be made beyond these propositions. If anyone wishes to deny their truth or their soundness, the only direction in which he can proceed historically is not forward, but backward, toward the time when there was no equality, no rights of the individual, no rule of the people. Those who wish to proceed in that direction cannot lay claim to progress. They are reactionary. Their ideas are not more modern, but more ancient than those of the revolutionary fathers. So one of the things
it really is, and you've talked about that before. I just had forgotten. That really is very, very insightful. You have to reflect on that a lot.
Oh, I feel like I'm blessed in that I get to reflect on that paragraph, 14 times a year when I cover it in class. But
lovely. But tell me the context.
Yeah, but
tell me the context of what I just laid out, and then you reacted to that. So talk to me about your transition.
Well, as you were discussing this, I was thinking about all of these countries on Earth who think that they have some new idea that's better than rights of the individual, equality, and they don't. But the next step I always remind myself of is that human beings learn lessons the hard way. We sometimes act like Europeans were so superior in that they learned tolerance. No, they didn't. They tried to murder each other. Catholics and Protestants murdered each other until they realized there are too many of the other side for us to murder. It wasn't some sort of special enlightenment that they had. There were just too many of the other side to kill. And then they said, all right, well, I guess we have to learn to live with each other, and then started putting together these ideas. And the downside, if there is a negative that always sticks in the back of my head, it's that I'm reminded of the dark side of that people will give up freedom in exchange for security. And there have been times when we've had economic systems that were capable of growth that did not have political liberty at their core. Nazi Germany had economic growth. That's sort of like corporatism with the stamp of approval of the state. You can still have economic growth. China, the great debate over what would happen with China has been, we hope that with economic growth and the creation of a middle class, that will eventually lead to people who want political rights. I just don't know if that's a good bet. It's a bet we made in the 70s, and it's been 50 years. I don't know when we're going to call this race. Maybe over the next 100 years it will turn out to be true. I don't know.
So Professor,
if I'm being pessimistic about the state of the world, I'm often reminding myself that people have to learn lessons the hard way.
Yeah. Okay. So Professor, let me tie it back. I understand your thought process, and let me react to your thought process now. We generally agree that for whatever reasons, some individuals, and then collectively, when a group of individuals get together, some of them just have to fight. They just have to create war when a whole group of them get together. And we've proven that throughout history, correct? I mean, we're just somehow a warring species. Yes or no?
The founders would say that human beings are capable of both. So what do you teach them, and what sort of systems do you set up to incentivize a different set of values. So what human beings are capable of is both good and evil. I don't know if that
Cool, but
yeah.
that's a nice philosophical answer. But just look at the U.S. since our founding. We fight war after war after war after war. We fight it with each other. We fight it with others. We fight it with our allies. Then their friends. Then we fight them again. Then we put our troops. I mean, how much money do we spend on national defense, and do we not use it at all? Of course we use it. We just shot down a drone of an ally yesterday, I think. I mean, that's not war, but we flex our muscle, the U.S., around the world on a daily basis with our military, not our diplomacy, our military might on a daily basis. Yes or no?
Well, all right, let me answer it this way. We don't have a system that prevents evil. We don't have a system that prevents violence. That's impossible. What we have is a system that limits the spread of it.
So you agree we're a warring species? Yeah, we're a warring species.
No,
so we
well,
figure out ways
you're talking about,
so
I'm not a warring species, like, because I've been taught not to value that. Every individual contains within them the capacity for both good and evil. And I guess I'm not a sociologist. I don't say we, like as much like
right.
Yes. If you're asking me about are human beings capable of violence, the answer is yes. But do they have to? The answer is no. We're also capable of peace. So these are decisions that we make. These are cultural choices that we make. These are institutional choices that we make. We don't have to be engaged in violence. As I sometimes say, we have nothing to fear from another nation that is safe, prosperous, and free. If every nation on earth was safe and prosperous and free, then we could get rid of our military. Because once people have peace incentivized and value it, then you no longer have anything to fear from them. Most people, and this is maybe answers your question, is like the vast majority of people are good and want to be good. And most people, even people who do acts of evil, all the worst acts of evil, have all been done by people who thought that what they were doing was good. My motorcycle got a flat tire yesterday, and 3 phone calls from people who saw me, and 4 motorcyclists who pulled over to see if I needed any help. Homeowner comes out and asks if I need any help. It's most people see someone who needs help and they say, how can I help? That's what the world really is.
That's lovely.
But the violent and the bad have an outsized ability to influence our lives. So that means we can't eliminate the police force. That means you probably should still, have windows and lock your doors, like
even if every country is peaceful, prosperous, and what was your other, what's your kind of
safe, prosperous, and free?
Yeah, even then you still need a military probably, because something will rise up with kind of behind the scenes, the unknown unknowns.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, but there's a big difference between having a general policing force versus making sure that you can fight 2 wars against 2 major, large, evil empires simultaneously.
Right. So you go back to me. We're a little nervous about world situation right now, or not?
Well, I always think, you should always be vigilant, but I don't know that you should let it overwhelm your life,
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna not eat my lunch today, and I need to go for a run, and I need to be nice to my wife. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that I want to do and should do.
You also need to hold your microphone out so it doesn't rub against your jacket.
Oh, okay. Well, is it rubbing at us? Are you yelling at us a little bit?
Every time you look down, it makes a noise. So sorry. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, thanks. It's nice to have a producer when the producer's not here today.
Yeah.
So give me. Let's go to the topic now. That was kind of the big layout. It doesn't matter if we have, there's a president, and the president has some broad authorities, so that's great. And the Senate's still there. He can confirm presidential appointments, and military officers can be confirmed. So who cares if the House is out of session? I mean, they were planning on being out of session anyway. I get it. The calendar said in January they weren't supposed to be here this week. They were supposed to be back in their districts doing constituent work or campaigning or whatever they do. So from that angle, I get it. It's not a crisis. But does it matter that there's not a speaker, number 3, in line to the presidency in today's world right now? Does it matter? Or it may or may not. We shall see. What's your guess? Does it matter that your acquaintance slash maybe superficial friend McCarthy is out of office? Does it matter?
Yes, it does. It matters because not because we are incapable of governing ourselves and that we need government passing more laws to intrude in our lives, but it matters because they've already done that and now there's no speaker. So, you know, if this were 1870, I would say, well, good, you know, fine. But the thing is that we do have a modern regulatory state where Congress took a bunch of power and also ceded power to the executive branch and then fell apart. you
Right.
know, so in that sense it is a bigger deal. And
okay, we're on the same page. Agreed. So what we do is, if you're a Democrat, you make fun of the Republicans for being in disarray, hope they stay in disarray and they pick up more seats, and then they get a Democratic speaker 13 months from now. Well, actually 13, 14, 16 months from now. Is that hooray? And if you're a Republican, you kind of gnash your teeth and realize we're a mess, and hopefully somebody will rise out of this that can lead somehow. I guess the worst possible thing, I'm being facetious perhaps, the worst possible thing is moderates and the Republicans and moderates and the Dems say, gosh, this really is important, and we're going to pick somebody that can actually lead us for 13 months till the next election, if the Republicans don't get their act together. But anyway, that's kind of my assessment. But what's your assessment? Next week they're going to come back and somehow the Republicans are miraculously on the same page?
No, but I do think that Democrats and Republicans alike, everybody has a tendency to overinterpret the results of the last crisis. And Democrats who think that this is going to lead to a great success for them are probably wrong. That one thing I did notice was that there was almost no way, because I tried to watch some of the CNN coverage of this and the MSNBC coverage.
Watched a little bit as well.
And one of the things that I noticed is that there was no way of getting around saying that all of the Democrats and 8 Republicans are the ones who did this. And every discussion started with that.
Right.
So I don't know that this necessarily doesn't get blamed on Democrats. If it doesn't become, oh, Democrats and 8 crazy people did this. And I'm not sure how that benefits
Speaker Pelosi though says,
long term.
Yeah, I know, but you don't listen to former Speaker Pelosi. She says this is the Republicans' deal. They own it. It's their fault. It's up to them to lead. Most of my Democratic local friends say no. Whoever's in power gets to run all of Congress.
They can say
it's
that.
their fault.
You know, right? I mean, yeah, that's why they did it. That's what they believe, and that's what they say. I understand that, but I'm just not sure they're right.
Yeah. I wouldn't have phrased it in that way, or maybe even it occurred to me in that way, but it sure resonates when you say it out loud. I concur with that.
Watching Anderson Cooper, and they were like, 200 and something Democrats and 8 Republicans voted for, and they kept saying it over and over again. I thought, and I was just thinking, there's no way for a reporter not to start with that. And at a certain point, for anyone who's paying attention, it starts to sink in. And obviously, I understand all of the Democratic arguments. It's not their job to come in and save Speaker McCarthy and he double-crossed them on this deal and that deal and whatever. Yeah, but I just don't know how this doesn't end up hurting the sort of people responsible. And I think that the people responsible are the extremists. And part of it might take a crisis for us to learn our lesson.
Mm.
Like, yeah, there's a way that that conventional political wisdom can play out exactly like we think, which is, former President Trump has endorsed Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan then, is able to wait out everybody else and emerge as the next Speaker of the House. Republicans triple down on crazy before the next election cycle. Democrats reap the whirlwind, and Donald Trump and his supporters cause the Republicans to lose yet another branch of government after losing governorships, the Senate, the presidency, right?
Wait. Now, Professor, I want to make sure I'm following you. Is that an option that you're outlining, or is that your prediction?
I'm saying this is the sort of conventional wisdom that most people are predicting will happen, right?
Gotcha.
And that's what Democrats are predicting will happen. And I'm saying, yes, that
could happen,
and probably and a likely set of scenarios. Democrats aren't stupid for.
Yeah, you wouldn't bet your money against that.
Yeah, for assuming that and in the short term, it's great for their fundraising too. They'll be able to make money and fundraise off of this. But there is another thing that could happen, which is you could have a group of Republicans who just say, not Jim Jordan. And we're just not, whatever happens, it's not going to be him.
But there's a lot of people that don't like Jim Jordan. I mean, that's very conceivable as well. I mean, there's a lot of people that truly do not like him.
Yeah. And so
way more than McCarthy, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a reason why he was
right.
McCarthy was the choice in the first place. That he had the fewest opponents. And if behind the scenes people start rallying behind Steve Scalise and saying, and then you've got the same sort of 8 people saying no, I don't know, because the 8 crazy people, who knows what motivates them?
Well, it's similar to you, Professor. I bet my relationship with Congressman Ken Buck is fairly similar to yours with Congressman now or former Speaker McCarthy. Known him for decades, shook hands, had lunch. I've known him for a long time. We're not personal friends, but been on the same side of many issues and opposed on some issues. I know him pretty well, actually. And I listened to he's one of the 8, which is why I bring him up. And he's not crazy. He's a former district attorney. He's a very conservative Republican from Greeley, where we both went to school, or you, Todd, and I went to school. I know him pretty well. He's not crazy. He's very, very conservative, but he's not crazy. So do you still stand by your 8 crazies?
I'd say I want to hear his argument for why he's not crazy.
Yeah, well, I attached his half-hour link to the
interview. I thought I looked at most of their statements, and they looked all pretty nuts. So
I have it on Facebook, by the way. I can send you a link if you're really curious.
I'm pretty sure I looked at his statement, and I thought, well, this is kind of nuts.
Fair enough. So, Professor, is there some say that they can't agree on Scalise or Jordan? And they did the same thing with McCarthy, and all of a sudden they're next Wednesday taking votes, and they can't agree, and they can't agree, and they can't agree. Is there anything like that in history that's happened in the U.S.? Major stalemates?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest fights were regarding slavery, and it took a good 50 years before abolitionists and people who were anti-slavery could agree on a strategy, and they were.
And then a civil war happened.
Yeah, they were canceling each other out for 50 years. And that's a sort of strange and forgotten element of American history, because usually people use these terms anti-slavery and abolitionist interchangeably now. If abolitionists and anti-slavery advocates had gotten together, slavery would have ended a lot sooner, but they couldn't agree on a strategy for 50 years. There have definitely been times, the split in the Republican Party between Theodore Roosevelt and Taft, but that was more personality driven than policy driven.
Well, there's a lot of that thrown into this, isn't there?
Yeah, I think but I think the example to follow would be Harry Truman in 1948. I thought, thinking about this from the Democratic example, what Truman actually did in 1948 was he said the strength of this party would come by alienating the extremes, letting them walk out. And then he won a surprise election in 1948 that no one thought he could win. And he did it by specifically alienating both the right and the left, and saying, I am not a segregationist. Let the Dixiecrats walk and let the communists walk, so that when we go to the American people, they won't think that we're segregationists or communists.
So that's a fourth scenario how this could happen.
Yeah, follow Harry Truman's example in 1948. That's something Republicans can do. That's something that Eisenhower did in 1952 and 1956. It's something that Kennedy did in 1960. It's something that Lyndon Johnson did in 1964. I don't know what to tell you. It's a winning strategy with a lot, telling your extremists to go pound sand is the winning strategy.
Okay, so you're welcome to join.
For somebody to actually do it.
Okay, so Professor, you're welcome to now join a potential op-ed I'm going to write for next week from now, Denver Post. I'm thinking about doing it with a former two-star general. He used to be a Colorado, and then he moved back east. And I know he's a friend, but I don't even know where back east. To be with family, I think. He used to be a cabinet member too. So he ran for Congress, and so he's a similar vein, except he's on the Democratic side, and he's pretty liberal on social issues probably, but I think he's so conservative fiscally. I don't think he's a madman. Liberal, like I have some liberal spending, and who cares where the money comes from? I think of them as madmen. But can you hear me, or am I still screwing up? Thanks, Jake.
It's rubbing against your zipper on your jacket is what it's doing.
I don't know how this one works, or maybe I got to get a different jacket on. Okay, fair enough.
Your jacket off.
Well, but then I got a big belly. Maybe I've gained weight or something. Well, let's delete that from the. Oh, it could be up here. You mean?
No, it's your microphone is right here, and it's rubbing against your jacket. Yeah, you're fine now.
Right here.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, professionals don't have these problems. You could hear me. It was just distractions, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you're welcome to join this op-ed. I think if you and I were Congress people, we should be really twisting each other's arms to lead in a different way. So I don't want to be in Congress, but if I was in Congress, I think I'd stay there. I'd say, no, everyone come back here until we choose a leader so we can figure out if we're going to fund Ukraine. And we've got to figure out this border stuff, guys and gals, citizens. We can't allow all these people to just come every day, record amount of people every day. Do we really want that? Look, let's figure out a grand compromise on immigration. Let's make sure our military is funded. Let's make sure we go back to regular order and stop doing these big omnibus bills. Let's go to committee structure. Let's take votes. And yes, some of us are going to get fired because of the votes we take. But everyone, listen, for the folks in the middle, people can understand compromise. Let's do Congress in a different way. Congressman Tootle, are you with me? Will you come back to Washington and let's solve this and get a speaker that we can be proud of and put America back on the world stage? Can we not do something rational, or do we have to just blame the other side? You and I, well, you're a Republican still. I'm unaffiliated, but I lean Republican. Do we have to just beat up on the Democrats all the time?
And I no, and I think that it is precisely because nobody is trying to engage in politics. politics is supposed to be about convincing people who don't agree with you to agree with you. And essentially everybody in Congress is engaged in a turnout election. They just want to turn out their base.
Well, in 2016, that worked for Trump. He predicted it. People didn't think he could win, but he went for a turnout and he won.
But people are over-interpreting those results. Like it's a common human thing that we often believe that luck is a pattern. Again, you have learned the wrong lesson if you think I want to imitate. And by the way, this has been proven time and time again because of how much the Republicans have lost everything else. Like again, it kind of, I don't, getting back to the sort of slavery argument, but like, do you want to end slavery? Do you want, like, because you have to convince people to agree with you. You have to get 50-60% of the vote, and you can get that if you engage in encouraging the better angels of someone's nature and make an argument that in a way that appeals to the majority. But if you honestly believe that all you have to do is appeal only to the extremists in your party, then you have absolutely no incentive to reach out, and nothing will ever happen. No politics will ever take place. It can't, because any amount of compromise is what causes you to fail. But you
and that's where we're currently at, right?
Yeah, there is a little bit, or you can just decide I'm not going to win that way. I mean, I'm going to win by getting the majority of people in my district to vote for me.
Right.
And that's the other way to win. It's harder.
It is harder. Yeah, it is harder.
I mean, think about it. Like, what's easier, rigging the game or playing it?
Yeah.
Like rigging.
Well, and it's a common human trait too. I mean, I don't know if that people like to gamble because there's a chance it could be easy and lucky, and all of a sudden, man, the rest of your world is set, right? I mean, it's a common human trait to gamble, right?
Yeah, and every congressman and every senator just wants to get reelected. That's the first thing.
That's their shtick. Yeah. Okay, so Professor, are you, after this conversation right now, you gave 4 different scenarios what might happen. If I counted right, I think it's 4 different scenarios next week, and maybe it will go on beyond next week. But what will happen with the speaker? Do you have a prediction on which one you want to kind of rank?
There's also them, like there's a dark horse, which is the guy who's the pro tem.
It's pretty thoughtful, I guess.
People could rally behind him too.
Just like
Patrick McHenry.
So that's a 5th choice, and there may be some other weird thing that happens between now and then, because I assume there are Congress people twisting each other's arms right where we're speaking, mostly to their own base. Yeah, do you think there's a single Democrat reaching out to Republican middle, or a single Republican reaching out to Democratic leadership saying we could go a different route and have get rid of both of the extremes? Do you think there's, out of the 435 of them, is it 434 maybe? No, 4. Yeah. Is there a single? Is that happening, or would that only happen
with leadership? Because there is no Republican leadership right now. But I mean, well, there's the next tier of leaders. But I know that the conversations are happening all the time between Democrats and Republicans
on this issue, on forming the leadership, though. Really?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's a possibility. Is it a 25% chance of it happening? 20, 10, 5?
Yeah, I'd say, yeah.
Really? You think there could be a Democrat chosen?
I mean, I would say
no, John.
25%. No, not that there's a Democrat chosen, but here's what I think is a 1 in 4, let's say a 1 in 5 possibility, that 10 Democrats join with the, all but 30 Republican, or maybe 15 Democrats and all but 25 Republicans, select the next speaker.
Okay, but it would definitely be a Republican. That those 10 when
Yeah,
it get
but it would
the
have to be a Republican speaker. Yeah, I'd put
yeah.
it.
And do they
Yeah.
get seats in on committees or anything, or no? They just want to make sure the system works, and we'll battle it
Who
out on the
knows?
next election.
I mean, I think some of it depends on, yeah, maybe, but I don't know. I don't think it would even be like seats on committees and stuff. It might be a set of rules or something that
Okay.
will encourage more, bipartisanship or something. But
But you
there's
don't want to go.
certainly a way.
You don't want Congressman Tootle. You don't want to go big picture and get 150 Democrats and 100 and however many Republicans. Take the mass middle of both and say, let's just do power sharing for guys. It's 13 months. Let's battle it out on the
No.
next election. Let's actually make this work. Let's solve immigration. Let's fund our government in a rational way. Let's put America back on the world map as a world leader. And then argue it out on the election field. But listen, let's power structure we'll share power for, that's what you just said that Kennedy did and Eisenhower did and Truman did. And
Yeah.
you even said Johnson did. Well, why not take that lead? Why?
But
Come
it's not
on,
going to be because it's not going to be 200.
Congressman Tootle.
Jake can look this up right away. Maybe I'll give you some time to look this up. But how many Republicans came from districts that Biden won, and how many Democrats came from districts where Trump won? And I'm guessing that number is under 50. But with the right, and so that's why I'm saying, you might be able to, those 20 some odd people on one side and 20 some odd people on the other side could decide that they're going to be the 40 people who decide how this issue goes. 14 Republicans from districts that Biden won. So,
but you're not only because of gerrymandering, though. You're saying that society culturally is split enough that it can't be some mass middle of half the Republicans and half the Democrats.
The congressmen are too self-interested. They're not going to.
They don't want to be known. They don't want to be known for the rest of their lives of being the great center leadership mass of the middle. They want to make sure they're known for the rest of their lives as the partisan wag who defeated the other bad guys.
Yeah, they're willing to.
And we're not a warring species.
Yeah,
we're not a warring species. Okay, I'm just trying to probe.
But we're a self-interested species that will engage in what they perceive to be their self-interest, even if it's against your long-term self-interest. I mean, I'm the guy who ate ice cream and birthday cake last night, even though I knew I shouldn't.
I understand that. We'll talk more about that in a future show. I already alluded to what I'm mostly concerned about, and you don't have to answer this, but it's immigration. We've got to fix that, Professor. We really do, and that's going to take a middle compromise. I am worried about Ukraine funding and other things.
Yeah, I think that's probably my biggest worry, by the way.
Which
Ukraine
one?
Funding is my biggest worry.
Which one?
Ukraine funding.
Just because it sends, it sends uncertainty throughout the world,
right?
And it allows people to move their markers around. Okay, we're on the same page on that. So it'd be nice to have a speaker to resolve that sooner rather than later.
Right. Yep.
Okay, cool. Let's open it up to
before that. We
Jake
got Jake's real-time fact checking. Said I was I overshot a little, but there are 14 Republicans and 13 Democrats. And I think there, in addition to those 14 and 13, there are some people who are in pretty close districts. So thus, that's where I'm getting my sort of like 40 to 50 people is where this is going to come from.
But those pretty close districts make them more meek and scared of their own shadow, right?
I don't think so. No.
Really?
It means that like they have, well, again, responding to their own incentives. They're the ones who could go the other way and won't necessarily be punished for it.
Oh no, that's not right, Professor. They're going to get primary. If you get on those little close districts, that's when the crazies say that the reason you're not getting a better turnout is because you're not strong enough of a conservative or a liberal, depending on the district.
Maybe,
but the votes are there to get.
They're
Well, in the general,
yeah.
well, but they're not
Also
going to be in the
depends on how.
general.
It also depends on. I guess I'm thinking about like the California primary system.
Ah,
Every state has the same system of primaries too. So
well,
I can.
California is unique on that, I think. So that is a good. I'm glad we kind of probed in that. I think California is unique. Okay, good.
Yeah. So I'm just
Um,
saying. I think there's
are
another
you
5 to 10 votes out there to get. That's all.
all right? All right. Jake and Bart, jump in on what you think about the speaker, or ask not having a speaker of the House, or ask another similar question of the professor. Jake, you're up.
I haven't really been following the speaker debacles too much. Is audio working?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I brought it up with my students a couple times in my government class. There have been no videos of Patrick McHenry or Kevin McCarthy that have popped up on TikTok, so they have no idea who either of them are. They also tell me that they don't care because they don't think that the speaker affects their lives. So that's what the upcoming generation believes of politics in America.
But I believe that. I can see that. If I was 20, I used to teach high school. So, but if I was 17, I'm not sure I'd be following this. Does that concern you?
Not really. It kind of concerns me when I just had parent-teacher conferences and the parents told me they don't care what I teach the kids so long as they get an A.
Yeah.
Now that that concerns me. Yikes.
I mean, we're getting to the point where kids don't want to do homework and the parents don't think they should be doing them either. And then when I give them about a week to do an open book take-home quiz, it's too difficult. I'm requiring them to read at home and it's too much for them to do. So,
yeah,
I mean, that's
okay. Will you send me an email on that, Jake? Let's do a whole show about that, because the same exact parent is demanding the opposite in sports. They are hiring the best sports coaches and trainers and special classes. We are all into sports.
Well, and that's the problem with a lot of my students is they're kind of consumed with all of these extracurriculars. And so the parents think like, oh, my kid has an extracurricular activity, so therefore you shouldn't assign any homework to them. If it's not in school, they shouldn't be doing anything. Oh, and also your class is too hard, give them an A.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, we're way off topic on this.
Yeah,
but
I know we're off topic, but that's kind of what's been consuming my life. And I mean, I am more informed than the average American. I just kind of have given up on the Republican Party over the last 4-ish years. And
yeah, but you're a solid Republican, though.
I refuse to register with the Republicans. I might register as a Republican to vote against Trump in the primaries if it comes to that. But I mean, I just come back to a tweet that Tootle did back in December. It was December 30th, 2020. And he said so this is a month after the election, and the insurrection will happen in like a week after this tweet. And so Tootle said in the tweet, and I post screenshots of this to Twitter every time the Republicans do something stupid, so pretty much almost daily. But it's really insightful. And Tootle said the American voters sent 2 clear messages in the last election. 1, we hate Donald Trump. 2, we hate the entire Democratic Party except for Joe Biden. The first party to learn these lessons wins. And if you look at what has gone on since 2020, the Republicans were predicted to win in a red wave in 2022. And pretty much every pro-Trump candidate that wasn't already an incumbent lost. Okay, there's a reason why Republicans couldn't take back the Senate in Georgia. And when you put Dr. Oz up against John Fetterman, I mean, the man literally had a stroke during the election. And so I feel like anyone who could have strung together a coherent sentence could have beat John Fetterman. But no, they went with the pro-Trump candidate. And I mean, you're seeing it now with the primaries. Okay, you've got politics. I mean, I don't feel like we really have serious primary candidates right now. I think that essentially everyone except for Ron DeSantis is running as vice president. So they're trying to appeal to Trump and say, we know that Trump's going to win, so I want him to make me his VP. And so in terms of all the chaos going on in Congress, I think that is just par for the course of, as long as Donald Trump is involved in the Republican Party, the party is going to lose, despite the fact that they are probably more popular policy-wise than the Democrats right now.
All right, Professor, do you want to just take an applause round from Jake, or do you have an additional comment?
In the way of somebody saying that I was right. But in essence, I'm like a broken record. I'm saying the same thing, which is people tend to overinterpret the results of the last election cycle.
Well, okay, let me just probe that to double check and get you on the record. And I don't care, you can lie or answer a different question if you want. I am certain that Trump can't win the general election. It's inconceivable, according to the Princess Bride, that he could win the next election. I'm sure of that. But then there's this little tiny bit of me that says we should be really careful because I'm not positive. Now, how is that for being meaningless?
He could not win a majority, but he could win a plurality. And
you're saying he could win a certain amount of states. He's not going to win the popular vote, but who cares?
He could win a plurality of the popular vote in such a way to give him the majority of electoral votes.
Yeah. You're saying so, but you don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, sure could.
I mean, I think that it's the biggest question mark is, if it does end up as a Biden-Trump election, that how many people will a sort of no labels candidate emerge and be viable?
Help one or the other.
Well, if it ends up being somebody who doesn't fall apart on the national stage,
right?
Like if it's if Larry Hogan, or I'm trying to, who else is Glenn Youngkin or something.
Both of those are terrific.
Yeah, but and they theoretically could win, but you just never quite know what will happen when somebody gets on the national stage, and some people just kind of wither.
Yeah, but Larry Hogan probably wouldn't wither more than the average candidate.
I don't think so.
On the nationals.
I don't think that would happen, but I just, if that did happen and he retained, say, 20% of the vote even after withering, then you could see a scenario where Trump ends up with a plurality in just enough states to win in the election.
Yeah, I'm with you. And Professor, would it surprise you to hear me say that I'm a no labels guy? I don't know. I don't think I'm a member of their organization. I don't talk to them regularly, but I think the country needs to do something different. Would it surprise you, or are you just like, you want to pull me back from the brink and say, John, please come back to the Republican fold, or don't do the no labels thing. You can be independent.
I've always said that I'll vote for whoever I think will make the best president.
Okay.
I know that.
All right. So that's kind of a
radical notion, but like,
right.
I think it only makes sense to, I don't. Yeah. If somebody is better than Joe Biden or Donald Trump, I will vote for that person.
Yeah. So, Professor, I think it was one of your professor friends that I told this to. In this speakers thing, I'm still talking about presidential, but I'm tying it back to the speakers. I said, I just don't see right now how Republicans are going to make lemonade out of lemons right now. They kicked out their speaker without a plan of who the next person's going to be. And now they're going to be looking weird for a week. And then when they come back, if it's Jordan, I still don't know how they're going to be not weird for a week or more. And I think this plays right into the presidential election. I think we're all going to need to take those lemons and make margaritas, is what I said. And I think that's a mixed metaphor. I think you use lime, but maybe I'm not a mixologist. That was your professor. You really like him. I think his son's a wrestler.
Brusino.
No, it wasn't Brusino then. It was another. Yeah, it was Jeff
doesn't
Bloodworth
have a
that I
son.
was.
Yeah. Bloodworth
Yeah.
is a Democrat, and his son.
Oh, no wonder Bloodworth's agreeing with me then. Okay, he's a Democrat. Okay.
Well, he's a
Well,
Democrat who's lost a lot of faith in the Democratic Party, but
yeah,
he
yeah,
is
yeah.
very much a an old school Kennedy loving liberal Democrat.
Gotcha. Well, he thinks the Republicans are a mess right now.
Yeah, he does, but he also thinks the Democrats are a mess.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. And this whole speaker thing has me very concerned. We're going to go to you in a second, Bart. And you are not as concerned as I am.
Me or Bart?
Yeah. I know. We're going to go to Bart in a second.
That's funny
Sorry.
that you should bring up Jeff Bloodworth, because in times like this, I do sometimes remember what he said on this show back then, which is he said, "Don't bet against America."
I love that.
And every now and then, that is all I rely on, is I say, well, don't bet against America.
Love that. Well, we should almost end the show with that, but it would be rude to Bart. And so, Bart, try not to blow that great quote from Professor Bloodworth, remembered by Professor Tootle. Bart, you're up.
Okay, I stopped my video. My thumb just kind of hit the wrong thing. I really care about the inability of Congress to function right now. And what strikes me is I think Sam Rayburn said this, way back when he was the Speaker of the House. He said, you're the majority that you have in Congress has to be just the right size. You don't want it to be too big, because that creates internal problems, but you also don't want it to be too small.
Yeah.
What we've got right now is a situation where no one really has a working majority. The Democrats, interestingly, are holding together amazingly solidly behind their party leader. I don't know that that's a good thing right now, but that's what they're doing. The Republicans are all over the place. The problem is their majority is so small, and they have members who are in legal trouble. Like you've got Congress member, you've got Santos, who really can't vote. He did vote in the Speaker election. That was interesting. But he's about to be put in jail. He's kind of a few weeks away probably from that. And they've only got 4 seats. Okay, that takes it down to 3.
Well, Gates might be kicked out by his own membership.
Yeah.
Well, probably not yet, because they've not done that. I don't
know. But as
know
soon
why
as the
they
ethics
haven't.
committee report comes out, Bart,
Okay.
I think their own members are going to kick them out.
Okay, well, and that could happen. So you've got this situation where no one has a majority. And at some point, somebody's got to blink, or maybe, what I'm anticipating is for the next year, Congress will be very dysfunctional because they're not going to be able to get their act together. I don't know that Jim Jordan's going to win the Speaker election. I don't know that Scalise is going to win. I mean, if Kevin McCarthy, who was he was someone that at least they could accept at that moment last January. I don't know what's going to happen now with these guys. I mean, Jim Jordan is a completely unacceptable leadership figure for the Democrats. They are going to do everything they can to sabotage him if he gets elected. I think if Steve Scalise gets elected, he's a different kind of person. He got wounded, playing baseball and stuff. He's somebody the Democrats can deal with. I don't know what's going to happen. It's really up in the air. I think it's interesting, John, that
optimistic or pessimistic, Bart?
What's that? Am I pessimistic?
Optimistic or pessimist?
I'm pessimist. I
Well,
think it's interesting.
Lauren
Boebert voted against throwing the Speaker out, and Congressman, what's his name? The other guy who actually voted for it. Yeah, Congressman Buck voted for it. Congressman Buck, I think you're absolutely right, John. He's much more, I don't know, he's a normal person. He's very conservative. He's a normal person. Lauren Boebert is crazy. She voted against ousting McCarthy. It's like, did she drink the wrong orange juice that morning or something? I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bart, if you were a congressperson, Congressman Miller, what are you doing? Are you with me in Washington, or are you back with the professor in California?
I think I'm in Washington trying to figure out if there's a way you can get some kind of coalition
So
between.
there's two of us in Washington. Everybody
That's
else is
just-
doing their own
just
thing, but
the
there's
two
two
of
of
us?
us, huh? How about
Well, I
you,
guess we-
Congressman Peterson? What are you doing? Are you in Washington? I know you got to hang up, but are you in Washington, or are you teaching class?
I'm going to teach class because while the pro-Trump faction of the Republican Party is essentially directing the House of Representatives, you're not going to get consensus. I think what needs to happen is that the Republicans need to purge all of the Trumpists. I don't
Yeah,
know.
so you're
don't
just
know.
doing constituent work back in your home district.
Yeah,
You're just
I don't know
keeping your head down.
how this is going to work or how long it's going to take, but I think that every pro-Trump member of the Republican Party that is currently an elected member of the federal government needs to be purged, and I think that Trumpism needs to be eradicated from the Republicans. Otherwise, they're not going to get anything done, and they are going to forever be consigned as a minority party, despite the fact that their policies are a lot more popular than the Democrats, because right now the Democrats aren't doing anything either. Trust me, I'm trying to buy a house and the economy is terrible and these interest rates are killing me, and it doesn't seem like anyone cares.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and we're not talking about that. Jake, thanks for doing that. I know you need to sign out. Professor, why don't you bring us up? Because Congressman Miller and Peterson are both depressed. So,
Right.
and on a positive note.
Well, here's what I would do if I was in Congress right now. I would be one of those. I would say I need 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats to come up with who we will back for speaker, and not vote for anyone else under any circumstances. And say,
And
it's
if you get kicked out of office in 13 months, so be it.
so be it. And you can find 10 Democrats like that, and you can find 10 Republicans like that. But it's time for them.
Many of them wouldn't be running for office again. They're retiring, but there probably are that
Yeah.
amount somewhere.
But it's time for those people to assert themselves and say, we're circling this name, and we will not vote for anyone else under any circumstances. So.
Fascinating conversation. Well, gentlemen, as I told you earlier, I'm heading up to Steamboat to see some Aspen leaves turn and see my daughter. So I'm hanging up, and I know Jake's heading out as well. Professor, sure appreciate your time, and thanks for solving problems with us, or at least suggesting how problems should be solved.
Yeah,
have a great day, y'all.
Therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.